Luys Foundation, which was founded in 2009 by President of Republic of Armenia Serge Sargsyan and previous Prime Minister of Armenia Tigran Sargsyan, grants a scholarship to Armenian students worldwide to study at the world's top universities. In return, Luys scholars apply their acquired skills and knowledge for Armenia's benefit through their direct participation in the DAT, Develop Armenia Together program. DAT builds on infrastructure that harvests the knowledge of scholars and allows the participant to make friendships and professional connections that last a lifetime, straightening the links between Armenia and people with the skills and desire to help. Luys not only ensures that every year 100 Armenian students receive an education from the world's most prestigious universities, putting them on par with the most privileged young students around the world, but also inspires its scholars to move from academic to real-life achievement in harmony with Foundation's mission statement: learn, do, co-create. To date, 420 young Armenian professionals have received and are receiving Luys Scholarship. Many of the scholarship recipients are Armenian children from low-income families. This means a child in Armenia, someone who may never have dreamt of getting accepted into a great university due to financial limitations, can now fully reach his or her potential. Long-term vision of Luys Foundation is to build a culture of civil servants and social institution that will foster positive cultural, academic, business, and communal change in Armenia by raising the level of education and sense of civil responsibility among Armenian youth. Luys builds an infrastructure of new institutions, programs, and relationships within Armenia to support this change. Voice of Armenians TV New York recently was able to conduct an interview with Luys Foundation's Executive Director Jacqueline Karaaslanian at Columbia University in New York. Jacqueline Karaaslanian has experience in leading collaborative design, strategy building, and management of large-scale educational programs worldwide. She worked with the founding members of MIT Media Lab at its initial inception, where she worked for over 25 years as a director of spatial projects for the Future of Learning Group and Media Fabrics Group. Since 2009, she has been living and working in Armenia, where she heads the educational mission of Luys Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us for our show. It's an honor and pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, of course. I wanted to start our conversation by directly asking about the intricacies of the scholarship that you provide. But right before the show, we opened this beautiful booklet that you provided, and you said something that truly inspired me. You said, "We're sitting on the shoulders of giants."
Absolutely.
Can you just share with our audience, because it was so inspiring to, it also will show the sense of where Luys is coming, where is our education is coming, what is our history?
Where we're building upon our richest part of the history, and let's start with Mesrop, Mashtot, and Vartapet Gomitas. They went around the world and gathered the knowledge of the world in themselves, and were able then to output it and invest it into the Armenian culture and build the Armenian culture as rich as we know it today, that continues to grow. And our churches were the very first universities of the world. Let's look at Tatev or Sanahin. And looking at this old tradition, we should really embrace supporting our youth to go all around the corners of the world where there are centers of excellence, learn the maximum they can from the world, and process it inside within their Armenian culture and their heritage, to then come back to the world with their inventions, their creative thinking and approaches in problem solving, and not being afraid at all to take the biggest challenges that the world offers nowadays, which is mainly also the passage from an industrial economy to a knowledge economy. A lot of times the knowledge economy is also referred to as creative economy, because in the last 5 years, the most sought after jobs, let's say the top 10 jobs, 8 of them didn't exist 6 years ago. So we also have to be very adventurous and courageous and mostly creative to be able to create some of these niche markets, new jobs. And we see our scholars doing that very creative work right now everywhere around us. We have students who are embarking on new ways of looking at communication, marketing. They're also inventors of, and their patents are being filed at the top 10 universities around the world. They are starting their own companies and startups in Armenia. And all this is showing us a very bright future. And we are actively working at endowing our future through our young, wonderful minds.
I want to move to the question that I'm sure is on the mind of many of our audience members, particularly the ones who have children at the college age.
Yes.
I'm sure many people would like to know, especially from you, what is the criteria of receiving scholarship from Luys?
The criteria for applying to a Luys scholarship are the following. You have to prove your Armenian identity. And we go as far as 1915, the genocide. So if one of your parents or grandparents is Armenian, you are already one step being eligible. You have to be between the ages of 18 to 40. And on your own merit, you have to have been accepted at one of the top 10 universities around the world. And this list of top universities is decided by an international rating organization, and it's published every year.
One of the main concerns traditionally has been that when Armenian students go abroad to study, they do not return. What I find interesting when I was doing research, particularly information on the website, that you actually do not require for them to come back and permanently live in Armenia. But what you require is a very interesting set of participations. Can you outline some of them for us?
I think you're referring to what people fear the most, which is brain drain. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, in the 21st century, the notion of brain drain or brain gain has gone beyond. We're looking at brain circulation. Mm-hmm. And actually, this concept was coined by Professor Annelies Aksenian at Berkeley University. And I think it's very accurate to our world. Because nowadays, no country lives and functions in isolation. We are all interconnected. And the question really is, what is this interconnection that we want to develop, and how do we want to grow it to be most profitable for your own country and for the world? So if we take this standpoint and we just look at, for example, the business nowadays, not long ago, when I was working at MIT, I had a portfolio of over 40 countries. So every day I was working with many countries, and I was sitting in Boston. So the question is not so much
where you are,
where you're sitting. It's who are you working with, and are you integrating Armenia in that portfolio? Mm-hmm. So this is why we are not so worried about our scholars not necessarily returning to Armenia, especially since we are addressing the entire Armenian world. And a lot of them were born and raised in different countries. But actually, the interesting fact is that we do not oblige, because when you oblige, it rarely works. You really have to entice them. So we have developed a program to make sure that our youth understands the reality of Armenia through their own eyes and through their own experience. This is why we require that when they receive a Luys scholarship, every summer they come and they work in Armenia. They share their knowledge with their peers from other universities around the world and their peers in Armenia, with young scholars from Armenian universities, and also the youth in different organizations, companies, villages, everyone, so that they can actually understand what is the potential of Armenia and what is their role within that potential. The Luys motto, 3 words: learn, do, co-create. Around these 3 words are the 3 arms of our mission. Learn. Be the best at what you are learning. from these top centers of excellence. And by the way, we hope that soon into the future, one of Armenia's universities could also compete for one of the top 10 places. That means every summer you have to come to Armenia, rich with your new knowledge, understand what is so special that you learned during the entire year that you really cannot wait to share with everyone around you, and especially in the context of Armenia's reality. We ask people to think of what they've learned and embed it into a real project that they will start in Armenia. Co-create is a very important part, and it's our programs that also reward best business plan, best idea for a new organization, new company in Armenia. So we have a Start Armenia fund every year, and our scholars can apply for funds to start their company. So there are 3 prizes. The top prize is $20,000, which in Armenia is the equivalent of $100,000, $10,000, and $5,000.
When I was listening to you, an interesting thought came to my mind, because the conventional wisdom when they say what kind of resource we have, right, as a country. We don't have oil, we don't have seas, we don't have many things that other countries have. But we have brain, right? We always say Armenians have a brain power. And to hear you advocate this idea of exporting our brain power, expanding our brain power, connecting with other sources of inspiration and connecting it to Armenia, just sounds such a holistic and organic approach to an Armenian education. But I want to elaborate a little bit more about this idea, which is, it seems to me, is central, that the scholars come back to Armenia. And I find it interesting that they come back to villages, they come back to small communities, and they collaborate and they create projects. Can you talk a little bit more about that particular program, and perhaps you can give us a brief example of how that program would look like?
This is a very good question, and it's actually a very key part of the Luys know-how, because we engineer the passage from academic achievement to real-life achievement. And knowledge is most powerful when it's in action, because you have an immediate feedback. Whatever you do works or doesn't work, and you don't need somebody to tell you it was right or it was wrong. The results speak for themselves. When we created the Luys Foundation, yes, we wanted our scholars to have best education, best training, but we also wanted them to immediately invest their knowledge into the country. When they come in the summer, they are already prepared. We are in conversations with them all the time. They have to design a small project that embeds big ideas, because every big step starts with a small step. I'll give you an example. For a while we worked in a village of Odzun. It's one of the 3 biggest villages in Armenia. And they have a lot of very natural resources around them. Lots of different types of herbal teas. And when our students brought the attention on this particular fact, the community didn't look at it with the same, let's say, seriousness, because when you're used to having a lot of something and around you, you don't always understand that it's very precious. They started to gather the youth in the village, and they showed also that whatever we do now, don't think of quick business, quick money, because in everything there is deep knowledge. So if one group of children did research online to see what is the value of tea on international markets, we were encouraging them to be researchers and to do market research and to do pricing. Another group of children, how do you package and deliver this good to the world? So what would the package look like? What is the profession of branding a product? And that's also another, for example, in universities, it's another easily 4 or 5 years of higher education and particular training. Accounting, all of these different aspects. So our students coached the children in these different specialities around collecting the tea and packaging it and selling it. Once we started to talk to the villages about green gold or green economy, then we started to get their attention, because like any traditional topics, you can also come with a new way of looking at it. So you put a new pair of glasses and suddenly you see new possibilities. And this is what happened in the village. For example, the children who were doing the branding of the tea went to the library of the Matenadaran and found the attributes of the urs tea. I think it's wild mint, and why it's good for your health. And they designed a very beautiful package that explains the property of the tea. And another one designed the logo of the Odzun village, because it has one of the most beautiful churches in Armenia, and with a rich history, because 3 of the apostles, Christ's apostles, have actually lived in that village.
UNESCO.
It's also UNESCO protected. And it's another way of bringing also pilgrims, for example, to Odzun. They went into a very deep understanding of our culture, our wealth, natural, historical, religious, and it was all embedded in the product they created. This is one example, but we have other example where last summer, 7 of our architects who are studying between the universities of Harvard and MIT, and one in Yale. They started to think about the Lori region, because right now the economy is very much around mining. But what if we unearthed all of the resources that Lori has and build around the possibilities there? They came up with a very beautiful concept of a knowledge monastery. And by knowledge monastery, just imagine the way in United States we have Disneyland. We could have knowledge land in Armenia, but it's the 3 dimensions of science, art, the earth, and also a spiritual connectedness, because in Lori Mars there are a lot of monasteries that have actually this also mission of being a high knowledge place, by respecting the identity of the region and creating a place where people would like to come from all over the world in this place to learn about today's science, but through experiencing it. So they're thinking more as the new generation of museums, where you go and you are engaged in an activity and discover knowledge in the process, like a robotics lab or chemistry lab, or even geology, because the rocks have thousands of years to tell us once you start questioning it. So they have very interesting approach that has mobilized a lot of people's attention. That's another project which is very long term, but we have started, and they have a very elaborate proposal. They did it with our students at the Sloan School of Management, with a very strong business plan, and hopefully it will get going slowly. So we think for any good and strong idea, it takes at least 3 years to get on foot.
Mature.
Yeah, and we are patient, and we work hard and all the time, and I'm sure we will get there. We have students who actually start their own companies, and I'm sure people who have visited Armenia often, they have had a coffee at Green Bean, and one of the co-founders is one of our Luys scholars. We have also in the IT field. We have students who work with the entire world from New York, with a team of their programmers and designers working in Armenia. And because of the time difference, these are young, very flexible companies who can provide the 24-hour coverage. So being in different countries is actually an asset, not a problem.
I want to finish our conversation with a rather simple question. Luys changed so many lives. How did it change your life?
How did it change my life? Well, for one thing, every day that I wake up and I work for Luys, I feel incredibly honored. Because to be able to create the environment for our youth to dream big and to go from a dream to make it happen, what is more beautiful than seeing young people achieve their dream? It's the best reward. And it's hard work. It's very hard work because it's also, it demands that you always think with the future in mind. So you cannot collect rewards immediately. It takes, this is not fast food. So you have to be applied and go through the most, demanding and difficult difficulties that may come to us, because we have this vision that one day all of our youth in Armenia would have had access to best knowledge. The thing that's very important is that they can have access based on their own merit, on their own decision, not because they were born in a wealthy family. Or so the kind of chances we give to Armenian students, I wish a lot of other countries could have. We are always thinking with 10 million Armenians in mind, not 3 million, that we are really giving them access to the best in the world based on their own belief of themselves and their potential, not where they were born and where they come from.
Right now, the website that appeared on your screen will direct you to Luys, to their official website. Participate, take part, volunteer, get involved, donate, show your support. This was an enlightening conversation. I'm very pleased that we had this opportunity to have you on our show. Best of luck on all of your future endeavors. A lot of courage and strength to you, and thank you so much. Luys Foundation is an ambitious undertaking that is firmly rooted in a vision of Armenian government for thriving Armenia. This goal is achievable because Luys adopts the best practices from the best thinkers and most advanced social and research communities from around the globe.